Paris in the springtime, then never mind the rain on Wednesday. That was the day cafés reopened for the first time in more than 6 months, along with theaters, movie houses, museums. The easing of lockdown feted with a photo op by the French president and his prime minister, bright and early, so the pictures could be out there all day long. There you see it. Catherine Field, your thoughts on this easing of lockdown?
Well, I mean, what can I say? But it's absolutely wonderful. As I said, I took the day off on Wednesday and went to the Louvre, and can I tell you, it is fabulous. There's barely anyone there. It's clean. They've spent 6 months cleaning all the glass.
Because the foreign tourists have not returned yet.
The foreign tourists haven't returned, and also they've got the ratio of how many people per square metre. And so it was wonderful. You can go in, you can see old friends like, Venus de Milo, and you can see Liberty leading the people.
Well, let's ask the exiled Judah Grunstein about that.
What's the actual question?
Yeah. The easing of lockdown, when you hear Catherine describing her day out at the museum.
It sounds lovely. I mean, we have had some loosening up here in the UK and where we are over the course of the past week too. In Newcastle, we were in lockdown essentially since November or December. Not quite as strict as in France because they weren't too particular about going outside for walks and things like that. I saw the photos. I saw photos of people at some of the cafés and terraces that I've been to and that I've frequented. I think that. There's just going to be, and I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet, but I think that over the course of the next year, there's going to be a real reckoning as we return back to normal, and a true normal where we can really stop looking behind us and forget where we put the masks with everything that's gone on in the past year. And I think that there will be a moment for real celebration, a moment for that kind of joy. Maybe it won't be the kind of photo opportunity that the VE Day and VJ Day celebrations in the States and Europe were for the generation of World War II. But I do think there will be that kind of euphoria. At the same time, I think that something that Anna said is very important about what those protests in South America and around the world have been about, and that one of those big issues has been the neoliberal model. I think the post-pandemic world is going to have a totally different model in terms of government's role, in terms of what people expect from government. I think some things will be very different. And I think we haven't yet really imagined how that will even change everyday reality of going to the terrace, of going to museums, who will be in the museums, what international tourism will look like, how crowded will tourist destinations like Paris still be? Will it just go all back to the way it was 2 years ago? A year and a half ago? Will things change? Will there be a more sustainable approach to all of these things that we kind of got used to over the course of 10 or 15 years? But really, the Louvre was never that crowded. The terrace in Paris was never that hard to get a seat at.
What time were you going?
I used to go there. There might be real long-term effects of the past year and a half. In some ways for positive. Cities might become a little more livable. Vacationing might become a little more sustainable. And people's, those minimum demands for justice and equality that Anna mentioned might be more strongly demanded. So I see it sort of in a long historical framework more than in just an opening this week.
If I could just mention one thing, that when you heard Emmanuel Macron, the French president, having his coffee, and he was very quick to praise the French people. He said, we did this, it was us. And it's not very often that you have a French president who comes out of his wonderful palace to talk about what we did as a nation, showing humility and showing that he's going to have to carry the population with him and thank the population.
In dire straits as well, so politically.
Alvaro Sierra, have you had time yet to reflect on what the post-pandemic world will look like?
Well, yeah, we covered the news about Macron's photo op at the cafe. I would say a couple of things. The first one is I think it's a really good piece of PR. To choose such a symbolic thing for the French people, the cafe, these tiny tables, people clinging around, sitting around, and so on. To choose that, as my colleague said, to tell the French people, listen, life is slowly going back to normal, and we all together did this. I think it was a good public relations operation. That's the first thing. The second thing, and going back to what another of my colleagues has said, is we should not forget that we are in the middle of the pandemic. Here in Colombia, for example, we had a very strict lockdown, and just a few weeks ago, you can visit cafés and places, but only until 8 p.m. Alcohol was forbidden. There was a curfew. And just before this third wave, they relaxed a little bit those measures. Now the curfew begins at 11 p.m., for example, before it was at 8 p.m. And nonetheless, the pandemic is going on and growing here, especially in South America, which is the region of the world most seriously affected. So I would say that we should not forget that the pandemic is far from over. And that these kind of measures, for example, opening cafes and restaurants, that give people some breath and some feeling that things finally are going back to some kind of normality, may be transitory, may be temporary. For example, one big question, and we ask this question especially in the countries of the South.
Very briefly, because we're out of time.
Well, the first world... just to put it, the world has to get out from the pandemic. It is not enough that the rich countries of the world will vaccinate, while the rest of the world will not be able to vaccinate. The pandemic will go on.